Welcome back. Today we're going to do a little short video on wheel paint. Paint that can be used to paint hubcaps and wheels. We're just going to go through the steps that you need to do in order to ensure that you get a good quality finish when you paint a wheel or paint a hubcap. So I'm just going to go through a few of the things you'll need. Of course, if you're painting wheels, the first thing you're going to need is wheel paint. Not regular paint. This paint's made specifically for wheels. You can get this at your auto parts store. Obviously what you're going to paint. In this case, I'm going to be using this hubcap off of a Chevy Impala. And I'll just try to show you a close-up of this so you see how bad it is. See if I can show you this. You can see right here, there's a little bit of paint left on it, there, but you can see the rest of it. There's very little paint left on this. It's in pretty bad shape, so this is the one we're going to repaint. Need some rags, and you need some Scotch-Brite or sandpaper. I have Scotch-Brite, which I think would work fine for this. If it's a wheel, you may want to use a fine grit, real fine grit sandpaper. Scuff what you're doing in order to get the paint to stick to it. This paint says it won't. Let's see, what's it say? No peel promise and adhesion guarantee. So we'll see. So the first thing in this hubcap is these covers for the actual lug nuts. That's how it's attached to the wheel. So we're going to have to remove them. They're a different color. We don't want to paint them. So we're going to have to pry them out, basically. Get them out of there. So we'll just take all them out. So the first thing I'm going to have to do to this is to remove as much of this paint as possible. Fortunately on this wheel, it's in pretty bad shape. So I should be able to get this off here. I might just take a knife or a screwdriver even, just kind of scrape what's left of the loose paint off of this wheel before I sand it and then repaint it. So I'm going to do that first. We're going to scrape off as much of this as we can get off of here. We don't want to leave it on there because it'll just make it hard for the paint to stick. Okay, so I've used a razor blade, screwdriver to get down in some places I couldn't get in with a razor blade. I've just kind of peeled off the remaining paint that was on this wheel. Best that I could, try to get as much off as you can. And then I used a piece of Scotch-Brite because these are just plastic. You can use sandpaper or Scotch-Brite for a wheel. Maybe sandpaper will work a little better, real fine, 320, 400 grit. You just want to scuff this, so I scuffed it really well. I sanded the whole thing after I peeled all the old paint off. I'm going to take it and I'm going to clean it. Basically, I'm going to wash it off with some soap and water, make sure it's real clean. The key to painting anything really is preparation. Paint is just the last step. If you don't prepare what you're painting correctly and well, then you're not going to get a good result. If you want a good result, spend your time in the prep. And in this case, getting all the old paint off, sanding it, scuffing the wheel or the hubcap to paint, and then cleaning it very well. And I'll talk a little more about that later, about what I use to clean these before I paint. And you notice I'm wearing gloves. It's not because I don't want to get paint on my hands, I don't, but oil in your hands, touching that makes it really hard for the paint to adhere well. So you want to make sure you have gloves on if you're going to paint this. So when you're washing it or anything, your hands shouldn't touch it, because your oil from your hands will get on the wheel or the hubcap and it'll make it hard for the paint to stick to that. You won't get a very good result if you do that. Okay, I've taken this and I've washed it off really good. I used simple green and some water, just washed it off, scrubbed it down really good, made sure I got any dust off of it, anything I sanded. I also cleaned the back pretty well. I'm not going to really paint the back, I don't need to, but I want to clean it so there's no dirt that might get into the paint. So there's a couple other things I need to do before I paint this, and one is this emblem. There's an emblem right here in the middle of this. Let me see if I can show it to you. There's an emblem right here in the middle of this wheel that's kind of chrome. I can't get this off. It's just plastic, and I can't really take it off. So I'm going to tape that off so I don't spray that. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take and wipe this down. And you can use like a paint thinner if you want, but I use just 3 parts water, 1 part isopropyl alcohol. I'll spray it, wipe it down, make sure I get any dust off of it, any dirt, anything like that. Make sure it comes off of the wheel, and then I'll let it dry. You have to make sure you let this dry completely before you paint it, and then I'll go into painting. I've taped off this center emblem because I can't remove it and I don't want to paint over it. It's chrome, so I just tape that off, and now I'm going to spray this down. Get a clean rag here. I'm going to spray it down. This is 3 parts water, 1 part isopropyl alcohol, just to clean anything that remains on this off. Any oil from my hands, any dirt, dust. Spray it down and wipe it off. So I've sprayed that down. It has to dry completely. Make sure it's dry before you try to paint this. I'm going to use an air hose to speed that up, but if you need to just let it sit for an hour or so. Just leave it until it dries. Okay, I've let this sit for probably an hour or so. It's dry all the way, and I'm going to start painting this. Like I said before, the key to this is preparation. Cleaned all the old paint off, scuffed the hubcap in this case, cleaned it with water and either wheel cleaner, or I use Simple Green, and just cleaned it very well. Then came back, sprayed it down with, you can use paint thinner, but I use 3 parts water, 1 part isopropyl alcohol. Get any oil, any dirt off of it, make sure it's nice and clean, let it dry, make sure it's nice and dry, and we're going to paint. I will say this paint, use it in a well ventilated area, read the instructions on the can, or use a mask. I have a mask, but it's well ventilated in here, so I'm not going to wear a mask today. The key to doing this is not trying to do it all at one time. Thin coats, multiple coats, read your instructions. It'll tell you how long between coats. This is about 10 minutes, about 70 degrees. It's almost 100 degrees today. It's 95 to 100 degrees. So in about 5 minutes, this is going to pretty much tack up, and then you add another coat. So you want to do multiple coats, thin coats, get nice coverage. It'll flow nicely and level out for you. So we're just going to do that. We're going to start painting this, and I'll just show you some of that. We're going to do multiple coats to make sure that it gets a nice even finish. I'm going to bring you in for, I'll show you a little bit close of what this looks like as I do it. Try to, at least. One of the things I noticed when I did one of these wheels probably 6 months ago was when you spray this paint, a lot of times it'll look mottled. It will not look even when you first do it, but as it dries and as it flows out onto the wheel or the hubcap, it will actually even out. I was concerned the first wheel I did that this was not going to look well, but it actually flows out really nice, at least this paint that I'm using, and evens out very well as it dries. Another coat now. In about 5 minutes. It's drying pretty quick because it's so hot today. Third coat. This should be the last coat. I'm going to try to put this as heavy as I can without it running. Okay, we're just going to let this sit now. Got 3 coats on it. It should level out pretty nicely. We're just going to let this dry. You might want to let it dry overnight. Today it's probably not going to take but a couple of hours because it's very hot, but let it dry out, and then we'll put it back together.
Okay, I let the wheel cover dry overnight. Put the lug nut covers back on. Put it on the car just to give you an idea what it looks like. Pretty simple thing to do. Just take your time, prep the wheel or wheel cover well. The paint works well. I've had one on another cover on this car for probably 6 to 8 months, and it's holding up very well. That's all there is to it.